In this second video of the 2-1G lesson, I'm going to go through the graph. Make sure you also filled out number 5 because you are going to graph whatever you created for number 5. But we're going to graph 1 through 4 here, and you'll graph your 5th line. So one of the first things that we did on the previous page is we figured out the equation in the table for something that dealt with phone calls. So I'm going to graph that one in blue. And you might want to have your table accessible so that you can look at that. But if you remember, for the phone call scenario, we figured out that it was $0 for 0 hours. For 1 hour, it was $10. For 2, it was $20. For 3, it was $30. And it just kept going. And all of these should be proportional relationships or lines that go through the origin. And once you have a couple points, you don't necessarily need to plot all of these, but you definitely want to extend your line all the way to the edge of the graph. And it asks us in the instructions to label these. So this was y equals 10x, which was the equation for phone call. I'm going to color code these as I go. Next up was laser tag. And if you're looking at your laser tag table, laser tag went up not quite as steep as the phone call one. And I'm not necessarily going to graph every part of that table. So laser tag went through 0, 0. It also went through, an easy one to graph would be 410. I might just graph the easy ones. So that would probably mean that 8 is 20. And that might be enough to make a good graph for laser tag without having to graph some of the decimal ones. And so this equation was y equals 2.5x. Okay, we've got 2 more to go, and you're going to graph the last one on your own. So then there was also one for paintball. Paintball also went through the origin, and paintball for 3 hours cost $75. We also found out what the COP was for paintball, which was 25 for 1 hour, so that one would go right about there. And I think it might go off the graph at that point, so that might be all we can graph. Should line up pretty good though. And this is y equals 25x. And the last one is camping. And camping is a little bit weird because camping did not cost much at all. So camping, the equation was y equals 0.25x. Camping went through the origin like all of them. And camping had a point at 6,1.5. It was like barely up there. So let's actually plug in 10 into this just to see where that would be. So 10 times 2.25 is 2.5. And so it's going to be right there. This one is not going to go up at all. And there's my equation. I already have it labeled. Okay. Let's go to some of the questions now. Don't forget, you need to graph your last line. And it says, how do you compare the cost per hour by looking at the graph? So hopefully we're seeing that the steeper the line, the more expensive the activity. So the phone call was paintball was the most expensive activity, so it was the steepest Camping was the cheapest, so it was not the steepest. It was the least steep. How do you compare the cost per hour? By looking at the equation. The greater the unit rate, or COP, the more expensive the activity. What happens to the lines on the graph as the unit rate increases? The line gets steeper. So the activities that were kind of in the middle for cost literally fall in the middle of the graph. So that would be the one in blue, which was phone calls, and the orange one, which was laser tag. So those kind of had a middle cost. This one was the most expensive, and this one was the cheapest. What happens to the lines as the unit rate decreases? The line gets less steep. And then E, if a certain activity costs $50 per hour, describe what its graph would look like. Well, the equation would be y equals 50x, and I can see that this unit rate, or COP, is bigger than any other one that we've seen. So the line would be steeper than any of the other lines graphed. So this is the 2-1G lesson. Feel free to rewind this or go back to video 1 if you felt like this went too fast. And I'll also be posting the key to this later today in Google Classroom.